My own brother called me useless, a burden, and a mistake. So he left me bleeding in my own home. But he didn't know I was already planning something else. My name is Lila Moore. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Lakeview, a quiet town where nothing ever stays quiet for long. People think they know me, the sister who gave everything to raise her younger brother after our parents died. They see a woman who sacrificed her career, her dreams, her freedom, all for family. But behind closed doors, the bond one thought would never break was already cracking. And one night, it shattered completely. When I walked into my house and saw Ethan unconscious, surrounded by broken glass and blood, I realized something I never wanted to believe. The person I loved most in the world had betrayed me. And the people he trusted had just declared war on me. They thought I would stay broken. They thought I would stay silent. But I wasn't what they thought. I was going to make them wish they'd never underestimated me. My own brother called me useless, a burden, and a mistake. So he left me bleeding in my own home. But he didn't know I was already planning something else. I'm Lila Moore, 32 years old, living in Lakeview, a town where people say nothing ever happens. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Because sometimes, what happens behind closed doors is more than anyone can imagine. I spent years raising my brother, Ethan. Every sacrifice I made was for him. My career, my freedom, my happiness. I thought family meant everything. I thought love would come back to me in the end. I worked nights, skipped meals, cancelled plans with friends. All so he could have what I didn't. I never asked for thanks. I just thought. I thought that love and loyalty would come back to me one day. But one night, everything I believed in changed. I came home to find the house destroyed. Broken glass everywhere, furniture upturned, and my brother, lying unconscious on the floor. I never thought the person I trusted most would betray me. But as I stood there, feeling the weight of what happened, I realized it wasn't over. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I would fall apart. But they were wrong. I wasn't the same person they once knew. I wasn't finished. I was just getting started. I wasn't the sister they thought they knew. I was a woman who had nothing left to lose. When I was younger, I had big dreams. I dreamed of a future far from the quiet streets of Lakeview, far from the weight of responsibility. I wanted to build a career, travel the world, and chase what was mine. But then, everything changed. At the age of 23, I became the person who held everything together. My parents were gone, and I had only Ethan, my little brother. He was just a child, barely a teenager, and I didn't hesitate. I took on everything: school, work, the bills. I sacrificed my own future to raise him. I worked 2 jobs, stayed up late at night, sacrificed my health, my career. I gave up my youth so Ethan could have a chance, so he could live the life I never had the chance to live. Every sacrifice I made, I did it with love, believing it would all come back to me one day. I helped him with his homework, bought him things I couldn't afford, and took him to events I never had time for. And when he wanted to go to college, I drained my savings to make sure he had the chance to escape this town and make something of himself. I sacrificed everything. I didn't just give him my money. I gave him my future. I sold my dreams so he could have his own. And when I saw him graduate, I thought I'd done it. He had his whole life ahead of him. I thought I had given him everything I could, and that he would never forget what I had done for him. But slowly, things began to change. He grew distant. The phone calls started to fade. The texts got shorter. The moments we shared became fewer. I kept pushing, kept trying, but each time he walked out the door, I felt that distance grow. It wasn't until one night when I called him, hoping to hear his voice, that I realized something had shifted. His words were cold, distant, as if I was nothing more than an obligation. "I'm fine, Lila. You don't need to check on me anymore." I thought I had given him everything. I thought love, loyalty, family. Those things would always bring us together. But I was wrong. And as I stood there, listening to his voice grow colder with every word, I didn't just lose my brother. I lost a part of myself. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I couldn't even see it coming. The betrayal. I had no idea what Ethan had done behind my back. But I was about to find out. And when I did, everything changed. I wasn't the same anymore. The woman who had spent her life protecting him was ready to fight back. And soon, they would learn the price of betraying me. At first, I thought Ethan was just distancing himself. He had always been a little rebellious, a little selfish. But then, things started to feel off. It wasn't just that he wasn't around. He had stopped calling, stopped asking for help, stopped caring. And then I began to notice things. It wasn't until I found out from an old friend of mine, someone I'd trusted, that I realized what had been happening. My uncle, who I'd trusted to watch out for me, had been quietly funneling information to Ethan, letting him access my accounts, giving him the connections he needed to drain my savings. I couldn't believe it. The one person who had been telling me everything would be okay had been selling me out. He'd let Ethan use me without hesitation, manipulating me the whole time. And then I realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about the people Ethan had surrounded himself with. People I had trusted. People who used my own family against me. I thought the emotional pain would be enough. But when I saw the bills and the collections notices piling up, it hit me even harder. Ethan had left me with nothing. Nothing but debt and betrayal. I didn't know where to turn. I had no one to trust anymore. The person I thought was my family, my blood, had taken everything from me. I was alone. My uncle had sold me out. My business partner had fed Ethan the information he needed. My whole world had been shattered. I wanted to scream, I wanted to fight back, but everything I tried had only pushed me further into a corner. But that was the moment I knew. This wouldn't be the end. They might have stolen my money, but they couldn't steal my strength. They thought I was done, that I'd just accept the betrayal and move on. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't just broken. I was just getting started. The first thing I had to do was silence the doubt. I had to remind myself who I was, who I could be. I couldn't keep looking back at what I'd lost. I needed to focus on what I could gain. And for the first time in a long while I was focused. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I started by going through every connection I had, no matter how small. People I hadn't spoken to in years. I needed information. I needed resources. And I needed them quickly. I wasn't going to fight this battle alone. I reached out to a few key people, old friends who owed me, people who had their own reasons to want the world to know the truth. Slowly I built a network. Every conversation was a piece of the puzzle. Every meeting, a step toward the revenge I would claim. I wasn't just picking up the pieces of my broken life. I was preparing to dismantle the empire they'd built. They thought they could hide behind lies, behind their money and their connections. But they forgot one thing. I knew them better than anyone. I knew exactly where to strike. I didn't just sit back and wait for the right moment. I made sure the moment would come to me. I started small, exposing cracks in their operations, spreading the seeds of their downfall. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't loud. But every move I made was deliberate. Every action calculated. And then I looked at Ethan. I knew it wouldn't be easy to get him back. But I also knew that the man he had become wasn't the same person I raised. And that was the key. I had to use his own choices against him. I couldn't just barge in and expect everything to fall apart. I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. They wouldn't know what hit them. By the time I was ready to confront them, it would already be too late. I was no longer the sister who would blindly protect. I was the woman who would destroy everything they had built. I wasn't just planning revenge. I was engineering their collapse. The time for regret was over. I wasn't just looking for justice anymore. I was looking for their downfall. And I was going to make sure they couldn't escape it. I had everything I needed. The pieces were in place. The time for planning was over. It was time for action. They thought they could walk away unscathed, but I was about to make them regret everything. The first step was getting to their inner circle. The people they trusted, the ones who thought they were untouchable. I didn't need to play fair. I didn't need to follow the rules. I just needed to get close enough to make them crack. I reached out to an old acquaintance of theirs, someone they would never expect me to have connections with. It was simple. Make them believe I was on their side, that I was just another pawn in their game. But the real game had just begun. I started pulling strings, exposing their weaknesses one by one, making them feel safe. I wanted them to believe they had won. But they had no idea I was already 5 steps ahead. As I watched them grow confident, I knew it was time to strike. I used their trust against them, infiltrating their operations piece by piece. Each victory, no matter how small, gave me more power. And each reaction I saw from them, well, it only fueled my determination. Have you ever watched someone who thought they had all the power, only to see it slip away from them in an instant? That's how I felt every time I watched them struggle to keep their empire intact. The tables were turning, and they had no idea who was pulling the strings. But it wasn't just about destroying them, it was about justice. I wanted them to feel the fear, the uncertainty I had felt when they left me broken. I wanted them to know what it felt like to lose everything. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about payback. It was about making them see the consequences of their actions. The moment they realized that everything they had was slipping through their fingers, that was when I knew I had won. Do you think revenge is ever justified? Is it worth it to watch someone who hurt you lose everything, or should we just move on? Let me know in the comments. How far would you go to make someone pay for their betrayal? The final move was set in motion. I could see the cracks, the fear in their eyes. They were finally starting to understand. They couldn't hide anymore. And soon, they would learn that nothing in their world could protect them from what was coming. I had spent months setting everything up, carefully, quietly, with a precision they could never have anticipated. But now it was time for the final confrontation. No more hiding, no more waiting. I was ready to face the people who had betrayed me. I knew they thought they were in control. I knew they thought they had the upper hand. But as I walked into that room, I could feel the shift. The air was heavy with tension, and I could see it in their eyes. They knew something was off. Ethan stood there, trying to act unaffected, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. The same eyes that used to look up at me with admiration and trust, now looked at me with fear. I knew he realized what he'd done, but it was too late. The others in the room, his accomplices, looked just as nervous. They'd been used to operating in the shadows, doing whatever they wanted with no consequences. But now they were about to learn what happens when you cross the wrong person. I didn't need to raise my voice, didn't need to threaten them. All I had to do was look at them, calm and steady, and they knew I was in control. Ethan tried to speak, but his words were weak. He told me I didn't understand, that it wasn't what it seemed. But I wasn't here to listen to excuses. You made your choice, I told him. Now you'll live with the consequences. They tried to beg, tried to justify their actions. But I wasn't swayed. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't looking for revenge out of rage. I was looking for justice, for closure. I had them exactly where I wanted them. I let them talk, let them squirm, let them feel the weight of what was about to happen. And the longer they spoke, the clearer it became. They were losing. They had no idea how close I was to bringing everything crashing down. It was almost too easy. The more they tried to deny their involvement, the more their lies unraveled. They had underestimated me, thinking I was just a victim, someone they could walk all over. But I wasn't that person anymore. You think you're untouchable, don't you? I said to Ethan, my voice calm but firm. You think you can walk away from everything you've done like it means nothing? He looked at me, finally realizing that there was no escape. The same person he had betrayed was standing there, ready to make him pay for every choice he'd made. And the others, they were too deep in the mess to crawl out now. They knew I had the power to destroy everything they had built. I didn't need to scream or shout. I just needed to say the truth. And that truth was enough to break them. I knew they had no way out. And now they were going to feel the weight of their own betrayal. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you? Would you let them go without facing the consequences? Or would you make them pay for what they did? Let me know in the comments. How far would you go to make someone regret betraying you? They thought it was over. They thought they had escaped. But the thing about betrayal is, when you push someone far enough, they always find a way to make you pay. I'd spent months, maybe even years, preparing for this moment. The pieces had fallen into place. And now, the final blow was about to hit. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about them understanding the weight of their actions and feeling the full force of the consequences. I made sure everything would fall apart, slowly and painfully. I didn't need to take everything from them all at once. I just needed to ensure that with every passing day, they felt the grip of their own undoing. It started with small things, losing power, their reputation slowly crumbling. And before they knew it, their empire was no longer their own. But it wasn't just about them losing power. It was about them losing control of their own lives. The more they tried to cover their tracks, the more the truth slipped out from behind. Their lies. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. They couldn't stop it. Ethan thought he could hide. He thought he could keep running. But every decision he made only dug him deeper into the hole. And in the end, he realized too late. There was no running from the damage he'd caused. It was time to end it once and for all. I had them cornered, trapped in a game they didn't even realize they were playing. I made sure they saw the results of their betrayal in the most fitting way, by watching everything they loved crumble in front of them. The final move was something they never saw coming. One last piece of the puzzle that would shatter everything they had left. I didn't just expose them for what they did. I made sure the world saw them for who they really were. The moment they realized it, the panic set in. The fear in their eyes, especially Ethan's, was everything I had been waiting for. They were no longer untouchable, no longer the ones in control. And as they faced the consequences, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. They thought they could get away with it. But they couldn't. Justice doesn't always come quickly. But it always comes. How far would you go to make someone who betrayed you face the consequences of their actions? Would you expose them to the world, or would you make them feel the pain of losing everything? Tell me what you think in the comments. How far is too far when it comes to revenge? If this story hit you like a punch to the chest, smash like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Tell me in the comments, would you expose someone who betrayed you? Or walk away? I read every reply. If you want a follow-up deeper dive into how Lila planned the final takedown, type expose them in the comments and I'll make part 2.